Let's pray. You ready? Dear Heavenly Father, as we come before you, we bring our addictions, we bring our yuckiness, we bring everything to you, and we lay them at your throne. And Lord, I pray that what I speak about tonight, that everybody will be able to see and understand that that old Paul is dead. That Saul has been crucified and been nailed to the cross. And I pray, Lord, that that we'll be able to look at each one of these events and say, God did that. Help me to be clear and concise and to share just how awesome you are in my life, Lord. Thank you. For it's in your name we pray. Amen. Okay, my name is Paul Sawicki, and I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and I came from an immigrant family. My father's side of the family, my mom's side of the family are both from Poland. Yay! And they became citizens. And so my mother and father wanted to take us, my family, out of Detroit and to grow into the suburbs, and which was all fine and dandy. It was all great because it was supposedly a better life, but things sometimes don't always work out the way you'd like them to. And as I went through school, I grew up real good, real nice, had everything I could ever want and need. Great life. I had no issues. Great parents, great brother, sister. I mean, everything went well. It was just those 1,000 little things that we're talking about sometimes can be 1,000 little things that lead up to some bad things. And leading up to those bad things, like what we heard, what we do with that, like what Mark just said, how we respond and what we do with it is going to matter. And it's going to take us forward, or we're going to be stuck in the past or stuck in the present. So to get started, let me go. Yay. Like I said, I had a great life. Everything was fantastic. I was a little insecure as a kid growing up. I was hyperactive, as you can tell. But it was a different time. It was the 70s and the 80s. And, regardless of what the TV and movies tell you, it wasn't all that good. So growing up there, it was a different time in a different era. I got 2 DUIs in 1 year and had to go to rehab. And I fought it as best I could, but I married this beautiful woman, and she was fantastic. You can do slide 1. Yeah, that's, as you can tell, we were in love. I had the girl, I had the car, I had the Mustang, I had the truck, I had it all. I had my own little business that I was running. Do the second one. We had it was the movie. It was the whole, which you could ever dream of. Go to the next one. Okay, this is the deal. I grew up in Detroit and I did disco roller skating, all right? Don't judge me. Don't judge me. But I did that and it was a big deal. Part of this whole thing about the disco roller skating is I was in a roller skating group called GP Wheelers. It was Gary and Paul's Wheelers. Well, what are the odds that 2 guys, both A personalities, would both get hurt in different accidents? I got hurt on a 3-wheeler. He got hurt diving in, and he made the choice, like what Mark was talking about, he made the choice to drink and continue to do drugs. I chose to go a different path, and he ended up dying, and it's really sad. I tried witnessing, I tried it, but it was just the way it was. So, growing up in Detroit, you don't have a lot to do. I'm into cars. Yeah, I was in a rock and roll band because we were in the basement. We had nothing else to do, and so the roller skating thing was a big deal. Okay, you can do the next one. Yeah, did the thing. So, what was that? Marilyn Monroe. Okay, do the next one. Okay, so I get out of rehab, and I'm 14 years old. Okay. understand that cognitively, once you go and you've been doing drugs for so many years, the neurons are clogged, and it's going to take time. It took time for you to get to this place. It's going to take time for you to become aware and clean. So I went ahead and got out of rehab, and it was hard for me. I went back to the disco roller skating, and because I was always doing that wasted, it was very hard for me. And so I went back into my martial arts and studied that and did really well with that. But it was very difficult as I was coming out of it. I'm a 14-year-old. And so like a fool, I've got this beautiful wife and a kid, and I'm doing life. I got my own business. I'm working in construction. I went ahead and bought this three-wheeler. And that Christmas, I drove around and all that. That Christmas, I went down to Florida at my in-laws, and I was not a Christian. I didn't like Christianity. I didn't care about Christianity. My ex-wife was a Christian, a strong Christian, and she prayed. Well, at that dinner table, she prayed, and I didn't want to be a hypocrite. So they prayed, and so her prayer was, Lord, some of us here are not believers, and you do whatever you deem necessary in that individual's life to bring them to their knees. Great, thanks, appreciate it. And I just kind of laughed it off. I didn't think it was a big deal. Well, little did I know that God was working. So when a godly woman prays, sometimes she gets the answered prayer. So Memorial Weekend, we went and did the family thing, and I had my daughter, and I got to do the swing set and all that stuff, and it was great. And then the next weekend afterwards, my brother had motorcycles, and I had this three-wheeler, and of course it had to be the fastest three-wheeler on the planet, because that's just the way I am. And this happened. Next slide. Okay. See that bar? See how that bar is right there? It's diagonally, all right? You're going to watch it. Do it from the beginning now. Watch. Okay? That bar in the back went in between my shoulder blades, crushing my third, fourth, and fifth vertebrae. Complete. There's no spinal cord in there, the bones completely crushed. There's nothing there. And that was the reality. The thing is just before that accident happened, that wasn't me, by the way, it was a different deal. I went back to the house. I was riding with my brothers. I went back to the house, and my ex-wife begged me, please put the helmet on. You've got a child. I'm pregnant. Please put the helmet on. So I'm like, all right, fine. I'll put the helmet on. I put it on. So I'm leaving, going out of my backyard and driving, and I'm thinking, I'm starting to pull the strap to take it off. And all of a sudden, this motorcycle comes whipping by. Now, I got the fastest three-wheeler on the planet. There's no way that a motorcycle is going to whip past me. It's not going to happen. So I jumped on it, and I'm holding the front end down, and I'm coming around the corner, and he's gone. Now, I'm not saying it was an angel, but it could have been. But you're not just going to be gone like that. So, that was the reason that I'm still here, is because of that helmet. Because when the pull-up bar shot me in between the shoulder blades, the sprocket with the chain was on went right across the back of my head. And I wouldn't be here because of that. So do the next slide. Okay, that's called a striker frame, okay? This is the 80s. The striker frame, they had my head in a halo and the bolts into my skull, and they would have like that. That's when I went home. But that striker frame, they would have weights to pull my vertebrae back into line because they were crushed, so that they could do surgery. It was every time they flipped me, and they had a 10-pound weight. Every time they flipped me, I would almost pass out. I mean, it was the most excruciating pain I ever went through. And the doctors kept saying, Paul, I don't understand this. Why is it that your respiratory system is starting to give way? I'm giving you so much morphine that your respiratory system is starting to stop. And I'm like, oh, wow. So I said, am I abusing? And he's like, it's possible. So I said, fine. All right, I want to be off of everything. Take it off. I don't want any drugs. So as I started to become clear and realized, of course, I was on morphine, so it took me some time, I didn't realize how bad off I was. And I'm telling y'all, this life is hard. Doing this message and all this, I cried for 4 hours writing this because I forget how hard it is to get myself, put myself in the car, to get up into the bed. When I lay in, I have to hold myself up because if I don't, I'm going to fall over. So this is a hard life. And these small little things that we're talking about, start to add up. And these small little things are sometimes the deeds of the flesh. Sometimes they're envy, strife, and the rest of them, and you stack them up, okay? Well, like this three-wheeler, God just knocked them down. He said, that's it. They're down. But there's still a foundation of some deeds, some of the flesh. And that's the whole thing about these little things. They add up. And once they add up, they can add up to bad things or they can add up to good things. The choice is, like Mark said earlier, is up to us. What are we going to do with these things? So, I go ahead, I'm going through the rehabilitation thing, and you saw the picture of me with the halo on. They couldn't do anything with me because all the years I studied martial arts, they told me to do 10, I did 20. They told me to do 40, I do 80. So I was so healthy that they just sent me home. Well, I was in that bed, I cried and cried and cried. I couldn't believe that this happened to me. Why would you allow this to happen to me, Lord? I don't get it. I'm a good guy. Then it hit me that my ex-wife said that prayer. Wow, that knocked me out of my bed practically, that, you know what, well, there's something to this, God. And when I was on that striker frame, when they told me that I'd never walk again and that my whole life was going to be completely different, I'd never be able to walk my daughter down the aisle, I'd never be able to enjoy the pleasures of a relationship like I did before, it would be different. And it wouldn't be focused on me. It would be focused on her, which is that really a bad thing? I don't think so, but sometimes it can be. But that's the reality. Well, here she is pregnant, a Christian, and she laid on the ground when I was facing the ground and told me, Paul, we're going to make it through this. And I'm like, but you don't understand. I do understand. My God is big enough. And I'm like, I don't know about your God. I don't want your God. And so I had to go through the stages of anger and process through all of that. And I got to the point to where I accepted Christ. And I got saved in 1990. Well, the way things had worked out, being in Michigan, in a wheelchair, you getting in and out, your chair slides out. And I'd get up in the morning, I'd plow my driveway. I'd go home at night, I'd plow my driveway. I'm like, what am I doing? This is stupid. So I moved to South Carolina, took my girls, moved to South Carolina. And that was another more building, more of these small little things, and it was the pride. Now I'm a Christian. All this is supposed to be gone. But I'm still holding on to it. The envy, the strife, the pride. Oh, I've got the bombshell girl. I've got the truck. I got the car. All these things I'm holding on to still. And I've got these two daughters. Show the next slide. So that's my girls. And you know what? And I'm telling you, they became an idol in my life. And as an idol, God was like, okay, Paul, I'm growing. You're growing in me. I understand this. But I think that, this is becoming an unhealthy relationship, that they're becoming idols. So what did God do? Knocked them down again. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, so there we go. So, okay, I go through a terrible divorce. My wife, a godly woman, she met another Paul. Interesting. And she met this other Paul, and she ran off with him and married him. So I was fine with it. All right, good luck with all that. Well, let me go back a little bit. On that sandy trail, there's another guy that was on a sandy trail that happened to get knocked off a horse. And his name was Saul of Tarsus. And Saul of Tarsus was struck to the ground, and I really relate to him. And I really relate to Paul because I see there's some similarities. And the thing about it is, what cracks me up about Ananias is that Ananias, Lord tells Ananias, go and talk to Saul. And he's like, well, you know, he's like killing all the Jews and all the Christians, and he's not like a very nice guy. And he said that Paul would suffer much for his sake. So I relate to that because I've been through a lot of stuff. Well, in 1915, I got pneumococcal pneumonia, and it was bad. And I ended up going and getting new rods put in my back, and it was terrible. And God did some spectacular things when I was in the hospital. There was a time when I couldn't breathe, and I knew I was getting ready to die. And so I went into the slow breathing, and I was okay for a while, and then the nurse came in and got me taken care of. Well, I ended up coding 3 times because they did a surgery on me, and when they did the ileostomy, they didn't sew it up right, so all the waste in my body kept going throughout my body. And it was bad. I died 3 times. And the first time, I'm hovering over my bed. My daughter's, Daddy, you know, I'll give you grandkids. I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, that may be a good thing. So they get me, and I get through there, and I get through all of this, and it ended up being another thing that was needed to be knocked off. The pride, the grandchildren, all the things that were in my life that I thought that I needed to be and feel okay, that I wanted to feel accepted. All these little things that I'm talking about here, they all matter. They matter up to big things. So I'm laying there. That's a picture of me when I died. And then they took me away and they revived me. Well, show the next picture. That's my back. They just did surgery, and I went down to Florida. Show the next one. Okay, this is me when I got out of the hospital. You see what hospital do for you? 8 months in bed, not doing anything. That's what it did. Well, the rod. I went down. I got all cleaned and everything. I was healed. I come out of the hospital. I looked like a refugee. I start working out. Everything's great. The reason we tell you not to do and make major decisions until you're at least a couple years clean is because I made some bad ones. The first one was the 3-wheeler. The second one was I had a Mustang parts business, and I would restore Mustangs, and I sold parts. And I sold all of my parts for $5,000. It was about $400,000 worth of parts. And I sold them because I wanted to go to Florida for a woman. And I knew she was the wrong woman. I knew God was telling me not to do it, but I did it anyways. And so that's what happened. That when I went down there, I was working out, and the rod popped out of my back. And when it popped out of my back, I go to the hospital, and I'm like, another, and the thing is this is another building block process. The business, I get knocked down. Now I'm there. I want to have a life. I want what you guys have, and what you want, the same things. A family, a wife, a beautiful house. I want all the same things you guys want. But it became an idol to me. And all these things that I went through were all idols. And all these were deeds of the flesh, were things that, I kept holding on to. And I wouldn't want to give them up. And so I'm in Florida, and the doctor says, we think we can fix your back. And I'm like, really? You think you can fix it? How about no? And I jumped in my car, no pain meds or nothing, and I drove all the way to Duke. Every expansion joint, this is an expansion joint, every expansion joint I hit, it would, Okay, the back of my seat, I had a towel, it was full of blood. When I went out to fill up my car, it was the most grossest thing. I'd roll in there, and I'm doing the gas, and the guy's like, dude, really? You realize dude, I totally get it. I'm on my way to the hospital. But it was the hardest thing I've ever experienced. The pain was more excruciating than when I first got hurt. And it was not good. So I come, show the next slide. That's the rod sticking out of my back, driving all the way from Florida to Duke. Does it look like it hurt? Yeah, extremely painful. But all those things, I was still holding on to this stuff. I was still holding on to the dream about the cars and all this stuff. So go to the next slide. Okay. So holding on to this stuff, I came and understood that, you know what, like the Apostle Paul, I asked the Lord to heal me 3 times. And he said, my grace is sufficient. In your weakness, that's where I'm strong. All right? Then later on, he said, that power is perfected in weakness. And do you get it? That, you know, that God works best in our weaknesses. And I've got a more visible weakness than y'all do. But all your weaknesses, it could still be a disability. It could be drugs. It could be alcohol. It could be 1,000 different substances. You know, and you're holding on to them like this. So let me suggest to you that what he was talking about, the living water, what Mike was talking about, the living water last Sunday. Why don't we take these things and let God's water flow over these things and wash them away? We don't need this stuff. If we get rid of these deeds of the flesh and these things, cars, the wife, all these things, if we get rid of these things, what do we have? Nothing, right? But that's the very place where God starts to work. And that's the very place where he started in me. I have nothing practically. I could have half of a container with stuff in it. I mean, compared to what I had, a big, beautiful house, you know, I have none of that stuff. But I'm happiest now because I let this stuff go. And God took it. And then from there, you start building on the fruit of the Spirit, the love, the joy, the peace, the patience, the gentleness, the meekness, self-control. In growing in this relationship with Christ, you're able to not only let this stuff go, and the drugs and everything that got you to this place. Because, you know, the thing is, now that you've gotten clean, you still have the same issues. Whatever you were doing before you started using drugs, you know, whatever it was, abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, whatever it was, is still there. But now you get to deal with this thing. You get to deal with it differently. You get to deal with it being clean. And bring it to Jesus and ask him, take this from me. Please help me process this and grow from this. And he will do that. And finally, I got a song I want you guys to hear. And while this song is going on, the video to this song is, you need to see it. Because in this video, which you won't see because we don't have the copyrights, but in this video, you will see some interesting things that I'll share with you after the song. Go ahead.
Sound asleep and too afraid of what might show up while you're dreaming. Nobody sees you. Nobody will believe you. And every day you try to pick up all the pieces, all the memories, they somehow never leave you. Nobody sees you. Nobody will believe you. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows how it's killing you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. But God only knows the real you. There's a kind of love that God only knows. You keep a cover over every single secret. So afraid if someone saw them they would leave. But somebody sees you. Somebody will never leave you. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows how it's killing you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. But God only knows the real you. There's a kind of love that God only knows. For the lonely, for the ashamed, the misunderstood and the ones to blame. What if we could start over? We could start over. We could start over. Oh, for the lonely, for the ashamed, the misunderstood and the ones to blame. What if we could start over? We could start over. We could start over. 'Cause there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. But God only knows the real you. There's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. But God only knows the real you. There's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows where to find you. God only knows how to break through. God only knows the real you. There's a kind of love that God only knows.
Now, I shouldn't be here, but I'm here for one of y'all or all of you. I don't know why. I don't understand why God has allowed me to still be alive, but I am. In this video, if you see it, there was a girl that was getting ready to jump off a bridge, and she was going to commit suicide. And one of the leaders here, Mark, me, any of these other leaders here, went and comforted her, talked with her, and helped her from hurting herself. Y'all are doing drugs and drinking, and it's hurting you. You're doing the same thing. You're committing suicide to a degree. So Refuge is here for exactly that. We're here to help you. We will walk with you. We will do whatever it takes to help you to get through this. Now, last thing is, if I could go back and change anything in my life, do you think I would do it? Not a thing. The roller skating. All right, stop being a hater. All right, you're just angry. All right, stop. No, I would not. I would go through every single bit of it, the pain, all of that, because I gave it to Him. I'm able to just to literally stand here in front of you and said that, yeah, God took all of these things. You know, yes, I mean, I feel inadequate all the time, but I'm not. I am created in the image of Christ, and I am seated with Him in heavenly places. So, y'all, if you have any questions or anything, the leaders here will talk, Mark will, I'll talk with you, whatever it takes. But you can do this. I believe you can do it, Mark believes, and most importantly, Jesus believes you can do this. So let's do it, all right? Thank you.